Let's take a look back now at the first year of the Obama presidency and a look ahead at the issues that will probably define 2010. Joining us now, Ron Christie, president of Christie Strategies and former special assistant to President George W. Bush. Also Errol Louis of the New York Daily News and CNN contributor. Also Hank Sheinkopf, Democratic strategist and CNN contributor. Errol, let's go ahead and start with you. Obama's first year, how did he do?
You know, I think he gave himself a B+. I don't know if I'd give him the plus, but he certainly made a lot of progress. If you take the number of very big things that he said he was going to get started, closing down Guantanamo, expanding a war, moving healthcare reform forward, he actually accomplished quite a lot of those things. And he did it without a whole lot of fuss. There wasn't a lot of drama inside the administration, at least. And so you have to give him credit for moving things forward. Politically, there are a number of Democrats who are going to suffer, I think, in 2010, no question about that. But the president himself moved his agenda forward as promised.
Hank Sheinkopf, who is going to suffer as far as Democrats, as Errol Louis said, and why are they going to suffer?
Southern Democrats, if there are any left, are going to suffer. Some Democrats in the heartland are going to suffer. It'll be the double bang of the economy not doing as well as they would like, although people say the economy's better, but they're still out of work in the Midwest and the South and in parts of the West. And what does the health care reform really mean? People don't know. They're unsure. They're going to take out that lack of sureness on a lot of incumbent congressmen.
So, Ron Christie, John and I were talking about an op-ed piece that came out saying Obama's looking a lot like Bush. Do you agree?
I don't. I think President Bush was very decisive in the way that he took the country to take steps to protect the country at a time of war. But the president also made sure to try to cut taxes to try to stimulate the economy. I look at President Obama, and if you were to ask me what grade would I give him, I'd give him an incomplete. He started the year with so much promise. He talked about strong bipartisanship, and I think he failed to live up to that obligation. He came out with his signature issues of health care, global climate change, for example, and he has yet to see either of those bills make it through both chambers of Congress. So I think the president started the year with a lot of promise and a lot of fanfare, but the focus on the economy has to be the incumbent issue for President Obama next year. And if he doesn't look at the economy and he doesn't work in a bipartisan fashion, I think that the Democrats could suffer very significantly at the polls next November.
Errol Louis, what are you thinking about this notion that President Obama is in some ways looking like President George W. Bush? There have been, as Kira said, some op-eds that have written. There's even an addendum in a new book from John Yoo, who, of course, was the one during the Bush administration who was trying to expand this notion of presidential powers. Also wrote the guidelines for enhanced interrogation. But other op-eds talk about the deliberative process. Where's the transparency, the Afghan surge, the deal he struck with drug companies? What do you think about all that?
Well, I think there's a certain amount of transparency that is there. I mean, he just declassified about 2 million pieces of government information going back almost 50 years. I mean, that's going to take scholars a while to sort of to reckon with it, but the reality is that is what happened, and that's what's been going on. There also have been all of these town hall meetings all around the country talking about the economy, talking about what it is they plan to do. I think we know a lot about where he's going and why, and that's good enough for a lot of us, you know, just to kind of know what the plan is, what the theory is behind it, and so forth. I think the deliberative process leading up to the announced expansion of our troop involvement in Afghanistan was a model of openness, frankly. You know, if anything, he got criticized for taking a little too long and being a little bit too thoughtful. So I see this as night and day. We see a process where instead of simply posturing and laying out broad principles, you know, like look them in the whites of their eyes, or catch them dead or alive, or these other kind of statements of bluster that we got from the previous administration. We've got somebody who says, like, look, I talked to everybody I possibly could. I took as long as I needed to because I'm the commander-in-chief, and here's where we're going to go. And it left everybody uncomfortable in a lot of ways, but that's what the situation is in Afghanistan. It's very ambiguous in a lot of ways.
But Hank, is transparency enough? You've got a really critical public right now.
Transparency is certainly not sufficient. This administration really began its work the day the health care plan finally came into some kind of form where it was passed by both houses of Congress. The facts are that the entire administration it's too early to judge 8 years of George Bush versus 1 year of Barack Obama. What we can say is that there's a lot of work to be done. Guantanamo's still open. A health care plan passed. Let's see what else. Afghanistan war expanded. He said he'd end these kinds of wars, these external escapades, but you know what? We're still there. So a lot to be seen yet, and transparency is too mushy a word for a country that is at war and is at economic war internally.
So let's go to you, Ron Christie, to wrap us up here. And looking forward to 2010, midterm election year. I saw you on another program last night. You were very hard on the president for his response to the Christmas Day attempted bombing, suggesting that the president is soft on terror. Former Vice President Dick Cheney made the same charge the other day. Is that going to be the theme for Republicans going forward, taking it back to the same arguments that President Bush was using against John Kerry in 2004?
Well, John, I think the key issue for the country right now and into next year is going to be the economy. Earlier this year, we were promised if we passed a $787 billion stimulus package, that unemployment wouldn't rise above 8%. And of course, the economy right now, the unemployment rate is at 10%. I think Americans are very concerned about the ability to find a job, to hold a job, to keep that job. That's going to be the #1 issue. But unfortunately, what we've seen with the Obama administration for the past several months lead many to believe whether or not he is serious about fighting, waging, and winning a war on terrorism. We've heard countless speeches on health care. I can't recall of a single speech the president's given about the war on terror. And the sort of bumbling response, the sort of aloof, the lack of emotion that we've seen from the president of this administration, I think has many independents and Republicans and Democrats questioning, is the Obama administration up to the task to keep this country safe?
A glimpse into the year ahead. Ron Christie, Hank Sheinkopf, Errol Louis, thanks for joining us tonight, and Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead, we're going to have much more as we count down to 2010, and we'll tell you our favorite stories of 2009. Stay with us.